I want to bring in the Cosatu delegate to the National Economic Development and Labour Council, Matthew Parks. He joins us now for more details on that. Matthew, thanks indeed for your time. So presumably the need for extended income support was pretty much uncontested between Labour, business and government. We know that Ters will be extended. Can you confirm that, and what's still on the table?
Sure, no, thanks. I mean, for us as Cosatu and also for our colleagues in other federations and in business at Nedlac, it's always been a principled point of view throughout this pandemic. If you restrict any workers, for example, the over 60s or those with comorbidities, if you restrict any sector of the economy like the liquor, tourism, travel, hospitality, restaurant, value chains, etc., there must be some sort of relief. We had raised that and we were quite frustrated often at times at the family meetings when these are not automatically extended. But we were quite pleased last week, Tuesday, when the Minister of Employment and Labour did agree publicly to our demand that the UF COVID-19 Ters would be extended for these restricted workers and sectors of the economy. There is a broad, in principle, agreement between government, business and labour at Nedlac about the need to do this. It'll basically follow the same structure as the COVID-19 Ters relief that was given out through most of this pandemic. For these vulnerable workers who are restricted and for these restricted sectors of the economy. We are still crunching a few of the finer details at Nedlac. There's actually colleagues working on some of the actual number crunching, etc. It must then also go to Nat Joints, the NCCC and Cabinet for final approval in the next few days. But essentially, there's an in-principle agreement. There shouldn't be any fundamental changes. Ideally, we'd want this applications to be able to start within 2 weeks, so by the 19th of July, hopefully. Hopefully we can bring it forward sooner, but at least by the 19th of July, and the payments will then be processed by the 26th of July. From Labour side and business colleagues as well, we've been putting pressure on government to do this as quickly as possible, because many of these workers, like restaurant workers, waitresses, etc., or many companies like restaurants and other value chains, they depend upon the daily earnings, the hours worked, etc., for the wages to pay to buy food, to take care of their families.
Matthew,
they don't get any relief. Basically, we're sending them home without.
Presumably these would be the targeted workers who receive the support. Understandably, it will be a bit more focused than the last round that we had. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Because you remember when we had level 4 last year, around May, June last year, only about 30% of the workforce was allowed to work. Right now, most of the restrictions have been removed, and the restrictions right now in place are for a much targeted sector of the economy, and basically the liquor, the tourism, the restaurants, hospitality, sports and event sectors largely. Other sectors are able to work, and hence there's a much more narrow focus to channel relief to those who really most need it. And of course, having said that, we do need to manage the sustainability of the UF going forward, because you may find that level 4, the current wave, might dissipate around August, but medical experts expect that it might get into a fourth wave around November. So we need to also budget for in case we have to provide relief again going forward.
I suppose that brings in the question then about the scope and for how long this new round of Ters would run for, and when applications for that support will open and end. Of course, you mentioned a date round about the 19th of July. What do we know about the scope and duration?
Sure. So the scope is basically those workers who are not allowed to work right now, the over 60s or those with comorbidities who haven't been vaccinated, who can't work safely at work or from home. The sectors is basically those ones that I mentioned: liquor, restaurants, hospitality, sports, tourism, hotels, and so forth, travel. The current time frame right now is for the immediate 2 weeks upon which the current restrictions are applicable for. But from our side, as Labour and also our colleagues in business, we believe that if the restrictions are extended beyond those 2 weeks, which we think is quite possible, given the current level of infections, then this relief should also be extended in tandem with it. Government is open to engaging with that, so we're quite confident that if at the next family meeting in a week's time, the President says we need to extend it for another 2 weeks, we'll be able to do so. But I think even then, you will not immediately go from level 4 to level 1 or 2. There'll probably be a gradual de-escalation to level 3. You may still find some restrictions, for example, in the liquor industry or in tourism, etc., or in sports, which are really governed by social gathering economics. that we'll need to give some continued support for those sectors which are likely to still have some sort of restrictions in place for some time.
All right, we'll leave it there. Matthew Parks from Cosatu, thanks very much indeed, giving us his take on the current status of that Ters recovery, or rather relief income plan.